Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm simply delighted with today's guest. I met her a couple years ago at a Women in Business Summit, and we stayed connected, and she is oh so fabulous. So I'm delighted to bring her to the show and to you listeners. Her name is Lucy Gilson. She is a Ph.D. who is also a professor and associate dean for faculty and outreach at the University of Connecticut, my alma mater, as a matter of fact, School of Business. She's also the academic director of the Gino Ariema UConn Leadership Conference and a research fellow at the Universidad Católica. Lucy, you're gonna have to help me with this, in Lisbon, Portugal, which listeners, I've been to Lisbon and loved it. The food was amazing. Starting in August 2022, Lucy will serve as the Dean of the Paul College of Business and Economics at the University of New Hampshire. We have so much to talk about. Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Amazing. Wow. How long have you been at the University of Connecticut?
Well, if you're going to talk about careers, I have actually been here for 22 years, and I didn't expect that. I joined straight from grad school. So I finished my PhD in 2000, and with a 2-year-old and a big dog and a husband who was doing his PhD, we moved to UConn. And at that stage, my department, so my home department is management, had never tenured a rookie. So no one had ever got tenure who'd come straight from grad school. So I thought I would be here 3 to 5 years. And here I am 22 years later.
Oh my goodness. Sounds like you broke a glass ceiling. Would you say in those 22 years that you were in the driver's seat, or what was that experience like? Were you rotating between passenger driver? How did you know when you were in the driver's seat, excuse me?
So definitely rotating. You know, I think of careers as the long game, right? And you know, you can break it into little sections, but I think you have to look at this, you know, over a career, right? We're not talking about a job, we're talking about a career. So early on, I was pretty determined to get tenure. I didn't necessarily think I would stay afterwards, but no one, woman or man, had got tenure. So I sort of felt like I am going to do this. So I'm very stubborn. And, you know, and, you know, we'll talk a little bit about, you know, what I think makes for a successful career. But, you know, I sort of put my head down, you know, worked hard, did the things, and sort of drove that piece. Probably when I got tenure, I probably went a little bit into the passenger seat to explore options of what comes next. So you get tenure really based on your research and teaching. So, you know, I do research in virtual teams, I do research on creativity, you know, and I published a lot in those areas, love teaching. But the beauty of tenure, which is the reason behind it, is it gives you some academic freedom to say, are there other things I want to do in my career? Are there other places I want to go? So I probably did sit in the passenger seat for a little while then, because I was observing what are the other people with tenure doing? What are the other career options within this field that I could then explore?
So when you went to school for your PhD, is that what you wanted to do? Take us back a little. Let's go back a little bit in your history. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I wanted to be a vet, because I had horses and I wanted to look after horses. So that went by the wayside a long time ago. And then I wanted to be a spy. So I went to the Georgetown School of Foreign Service. So, and then I actually went and got my first job working for M&M Mars in London. And I actually didn't go back to graduate school intentionally. My husband was transferred to Atlanta. And while we were there, Georgia Tech needed a rowing coach. And I had rowed crew in undergrad at a very high level. And so they basically said, would you coach the crew team for us, but we can't pay you. But if you can get into graduate school, we can put you on a graduate assistantship, and that's how we can pay you. So I did my MBA as a coach, as a graduate assistant. And then while I was doing that, one of the faculty members asked me to work on a research project. And I started working on a research project. I really didn't know what research was and enjoyed it so much. And I guess I was good at it. And so the faculty member said, do you want to do a PhD and work on a grant with me? So I actually never applied to graduate school to do a PhD. I never took the GMATs, which drive some of my colleagues crazy. And I literally moved my desk from the MBA suite to the PhD offices and started my PhD. So, and again, I mean, I think that, I do think this is actually an important thing to talk about with careers is, there is planning and doing the things that you have to do, but sometimes it's being at the right place at the right time. It's a little bit of luck. It's a little bit of drawing on your resources, drawing on your background, and taking the risk.
Let's talk about risk and creativity, because I heard some creativity in there. Talk to me, what made you say yes to that opportunity? Because it's a sizable investment of time. You're in a family, and what made you say yes to that opportunity?
So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, because I think this is sort of fundamentally what I believe and who I am. I think, again, you think about your careers, you think about opportunities, and you think about luck. To some degree, I think you make your own luck. There's always a little piece of luck, but you have to put yourself in a position to be able to be lucky, if that's the right way of looking at it. So a lot of it, I think, is just hard work, right? Anybody who, we look at and say, wow, they do the X, or they have this title, they're in this career. There is a lot of hard work that goes into this, right? I joke as a professor, I was in Seattle last week presenting my work. People are like, oh, that's so glamorous. All day yesterday, I was just locked in my study, checking references and making sure the papers aligned and, finding, pieces and papers to support arguments. It is very unglamorous, 90% of the time. It's a lot of hard work, but you get that little minute. So, of stardom or whatever it is. But so, I really think that it's hard work, and it's really knowing your field, knowing your stuff. So, you can't be excellent at everything. So I think early on in your career, in your life, you pick the things that you really care about, where you really want to be excellent. And you have to be good at most things, but then you pick those things and you really, put your effort into being excellent there. So I think, when we start talking about risks and taking leaps, it's hard work is the first thing, right? The second thing is really doing the job you have now. And I don't care if you're a graduate student, my daughter at the moment is working at Home Goods because she's a singer and she sings professionally, but that only pays the rent, right? Do the job you have now well, own it. And then you can start looking at the next piece. So an UConn alum who's the CEO of Coach, she describes it as learn the job you're doing, perform the job you're doing, improve the job you're doing. Then you're ready to look externally. And I think if you think about it as learn, do, improve, the risk is less risky, right? Because you're coming from this position of strength. The third thing I think is hugely important, but when we're talking about risk or looking at careers, is relationships, right? Invest the time throughout your career in building those relationships, right? Who are the people who can help you, and who are the people that you are helping? Because those circles come back throughout your career, and you will learn how to help others from those who have helped you. right? Help the next generation, right? Building those relationships, building that team. So I think again, if you have that sort of hard work, doing your job and relationships, you always have to have a little bit of luck. There just is a little bit of luck involved in this, but I think you set yourself up to be in the right place at the right time. And then the risk seems, it's still scary, but a little bit less risky.
So what was going through your mind when you said yes to the PhD opportunity that really changed your life?
So two of those things. One, the relationship. I loved the faculty who I was working on this research with. She was mentoring me. I could just see how she worked with others. So I thought this is somebody who I'd like to spend more time working with and learn from. So the relationship piece of it. The other piece was the work, right? Studying a PhD meant you could study things, so when you're a student in a traditional way we think of a secondary school or high school or undergrad, you go and take a course that the professor, teacher has outlined for you. With a PhD, you can decide what you want to study, right? Nobody says you have to do a PhD in X. And so my thesis was on the relationship between diversity and creativity and how fairness plays. Nobody said these are things you have to look at. I didn't think I even knew what that was when I said yes to doing a PhD. It's basically, take some classes, read, and come up with areas that you want to study. So to me, that was really exciting.
You're inspiring me, Lucy, because I don't know if you know this. I am thinking about a PhD. And when I heard your comment about the GMAT, I thought, oh man, that's a sticking point, that GMAT. Most people let those exams hold you back.
So absolutely, let's talk about that, because one of my best PhD students had a low GMAT, and there was debate when we were reviewing their application, and a lot of people said, "Oh, I don't know if we want to take them into the PhD program." And I fought for this student, and they are a superstar professor now. But I think they were named as like a Poets and Quants under 40. So yeah, but there are a lot of people out there who are GMAT focused, but we can definitely talk about that.
Oh, okay. See, listeners, I've got a follow-up action for Lucy. Lucy, it felt like you were talking about your formula for owning your career when you talked about the learn, do, improve, when you talked about, I would say, trusted relationships, really leaning into those trusted relationships. Do you want to elaborate, or can you elaborate if there are other things that you consider vital ingredients for successfully owning your career?
I would go back to, it's hard work, doing the job you are in now. And I can't stress that enough. There are so many people who think they're doing their next job and neglect the job they're in now. Like, really own what you're doing now, make it your own, improve it, and then move forward. So yeah, hard work, doing the job you have now, relationships, and then luck. That to me is the formula.
If you were to name your career body of work, or have a book title for that, what would the name be?
So I research creativity, doesn't mean that I am creative. I don't know if I have a title, but I think back now, like sitting here with my 22 years at UConn, and I think it's hopefully about the students you have helped, the knowledge you have created. How do these things all come together? Sort of creating knowledge and building teams. There you go. There's my book title. Because I think that's one of the things that's very exciting about being a professor, right? That you are creating knowledge. So I started studying virtual teams 20 years ago. Like, no one really knew what virtual teams were. The last 2 years, 3 years, everybody's like, wow, how can you help us get our virtual, with our virtual teams? What do you know? And we know a lot, right? We have been doing a lot of research on that. And that's super exciting. Like, people ask me questions and I'm like, I know the answer to that. We have research on that. So creating knowledge is super exciting. That sort of like gives you like this little buzz. But the other piece to me is I have never published a paper or a book or written a chapter on my own. And a lot of people say that is a negative. I disagree because I actually like the relationship piece of it. I like working with other people. Is it graduate students who you're training and you're bringing along? Is it senior people who you're learning from, or is it peers where you're just bouncing ideas and making things better together? So, a lot of this to me is the people side. It's the team.
Mm. So I wrote down manifest your luck. Something from the conversation came up for me. Manifest your luck, which may be the title of your episode. So with the people or surround yourself with the right people.
Completely, right? And I think surrounding yourself with the right people, to me, it's always a two-way street, right? You're giving help, you're helping, you're receiving help, you're being gracious. There's a one-page article that I give to all my students on the two most important words. Thank you, right? People giving their time to you, helping you. Feedback is always, meant to be developmental. It's always meant to be something that is helpful. It doesn't mean, trust me, that I haven't had hard conversations, that I haven't had to let people go, right? But there are ways of doing that, right? Because again, if you think about these things as conversations, as building relationships, you're not severing those relationships necessarily just because you're firing somebody. It might feel like that at the time, but it is incumbent upon you to make that as this is the decision that is right for the organization, the team, whoever's going to be at this point in time. But it's not about the relationship, right? So anyway, so those are something that I think is important to me.
What resources, it sounds like there's some savviness around that comes with time and experience. What resources have you found along the way that have been useful to growing your career, accelerating in your career?
So I'm an avid reader. I'm really a reader junkie. So I have books upon books upon books. I also read a lot of I read a lot of academic journals, right? So I'm also reading, the hardcore, what the methodology is to look at, what's happening. I also read a lot of the practitioner press, what is in, the Forbes, what is in Harvard Business Review, what is in Org Dynamics, right? Organizational dynamics, right? Has articles that are research that are written in such a way for MBA students and practitioners. I just edited a whole issue in that journal on virtual teams for that very reason, right? How do we tell is the wrong way, share with the business community what we know about virtual teams in such a way that's not going to put you to sleep, right? Because as academics, we tend to write in this very boring, scientific way. But yeah, there's so much that will be helpful to the business community. How do we do that? So, I read those, I listen to podcasts, I talk to people. That's one of the things I love about teaching, right? Our students teach us so much. I'm the faculty, I've been the faculty advisor for many years for Started Women in Business here at UConn. Meeting those young women every year, talking to them, hearing about their career aspirations, what they're afraid of. This group that just finished their junior year now came to me at the beginning of the year. They had only had one semester on campus their whole career. They were like, we need help in adulting. We need help in talking to people face to face. So, you can learn from everyone and everywhere, so I'm always, curious, very curious, and probably ask too many questions. But that's how you learn.
See, I wrote down another episode title could be Stay Curious.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Oh, I do think, that's what, learning is. You talk about hard work is not just like, I've just got to put in hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm not in that school. Hard work is also learning, right? Helping your brain develop, like learning new things, trying things. And again, it's incumbent upon us in leadership management roles to say, it's okay if you fail. Like, I'd rather you tried something new. If it doesn't work, maybe there are pieces of it that worked, and let's learn from that and move on. And again, that comes back to a relationship. You have to have trust in me that if the thing that you're doing doesn't work, I'm not going to blow up or fire you or whatever it's going to be,
Sure.
and let's decide. And again, let's not be silly about this. Let's decide where are the times and places to take risks, right? And where are the times and places to do what is tried and true and we know that's going to work because of this reason, right? And we navigate those together.
Mm. So you're about to step into a new role after 22 years. What are the career lessons that you take forward, or what is informing? What are you keeping in your head as you step into this new role in University of New Hampshire?
So open mind. There's not one way, right? There's no one way to educate the next generation, right? There's no one way to do research. So they have a different student body. It's a school that's very student centric at the undergraduate level. They have great faculty, but I have to really go in with a learning mindset. What do they do? It's not a change mindset, it's a learning mindset. And also a relationship mindset. I need to get to know them. They need to get to know me, right? I'm going, the school has got an amazing dean right now, an amazing leadership team. How do we build on that and keep the school going and growing, right? And that's not one person, right? The dean doesn't do that, right? The dean does that with the team and the school and the staff and the students, right? And the faculty, right? We do that together. So what's exciting is there's just so much to learn.
That was going to be my next question for you. What are you most excited about with this new opportunity?
Yeah, no, so much to learn. And, again, I've met a number now of their faculty and staff and a couple of students. And yeah, I mean, I think they're in a really good place. They have some great programs. They have some great alumni and donors. It's where do we want to go? Where can we go together?
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question before we wrapped up the interview. So have you ever been in, not in the driver's seat, and how did you navigate your way back to the driver's seat in your career?
So I very much stepped away also from the driver's seat at a time when I felt that we had poor leadership, and I disagreed fundamentally with some of the decisions that were being made. And so the way I refocused my driver's seat, I would say, was to think about what do I value in my career that is separate from the organization, right? So there's your career and there's your career within the organization. And so at that stage, I focused very much on how am I going to teach my classes, my students, in the best way I can, and really put my effort into that. How am I going to, that's how I developed my relationship actually with Católica in Lisbon. How am I going to work with people around the world who are doing research that is similar to mine to really build my research portfolio, understand what other people are doing, and sort of really build that community. Because usually I feel very strongly about the organization that I'm a part of and being a citizen, and growth is within the organization. So that would be an example, in running the Gina Oriama Yukon Leadership Conference. That was really growth within the how do I help the organization and what we're doing. But I think sometimes you refocus your driver's seat by focusing on yourself and what are some of your core values.
I have so many titles. Thank you, Lucy. I have so many titles for your book when you want to write it. I'm able to glean a lot of titles from you. And one of them is how can I have a help mindset was another thing that just came up. So many great nuggets. I want to thank you for making the time to come and join us on the show and just drop all this wisdom that you carry with you to the next chapter in your career.
Thank you. It is, and and let me also say, it always sounds, when you're early in your career and you're hearing people who are moving into big roles, that they have it all together. We're all scared, right? We all have days when we're like, oh, imposter syndrome. And you have to embrace that. There will be things that I don't know and things that don't work out. And, do a whole podcast on, lessons learned along the way by things that didn't go as planned. But, it's really kind of seeing the exciting piece of these things and the learning opportunities. And I'm quoting Dr. Seuss, like the places we can go or something, he says there's a book, something like that, or You Have a Young Child, it's something like that, right? The places we go. It's really just embracing that piece. And that's the exciting piece.
Very excited. Well, I'm very excited for you in this new chapter. And so tell our listeners, if they would like to stay connected with you after the show, how can they do so?
Thank you. So the best way to stay connected with me is through LinkedIn. So I think I'm just Lucy Gilson. There might be a middle L, but Lucy Gilson, Lucy L. Gilson, Lucy Gilson, Yukon. I don't think it comes up as New Hampshire yet, because obviously it still lists me as Yukon, but absolutely join me in LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of social media, of sharing, either is it things professionally, is it things through research? And also that's such a great way to learn about what other people are doing. I mean, I'm a big consumer of what everybody else posts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what the mascot is for University of New Hampshire. I know
Wildcats.
Wildcats.
Yeah.
All right.
Wildcat.
Will they ever cross paths with Yukon?
Yeah. What happens when a wildcat meets a husky? That's a good question.
Yeah. Oh, that could be a book.
There you go. That's another title for you. From husky to wildcat.
Yes. Well, I just want to say thank you again for imparting your wisdom to our listeners. We very much appreciate you, Lucy.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, listeners. Keep listening.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.